What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be covering the Bochum and the Knoxville regionals that happened over the weekend, and boy were they a doozy. We have some awesome player storylines to cover and some incredible meta developments that are going to be shaping the remainder of Series 2 going forward. We have two more regionals in North America with the Vancouver and the Charlotte regional before we switch over to Series 3. Probably, we're still not 100% sure what we're playing in Fort Wayne, because that's the weekend of the switchover, but at least two more regionals. And without further ado, let's just jump right on into the Bochum Regionals result. The Bochum Regionals were won by Markus Statter, adding another trophy to his already very large trophy cabinet, one of the best players of all time. And this team, we need to look at. You know, when we talk about the meta breakdown, we'll talk about this team a little more, but this is going to be the defining team coming out of this weekend. And the reason I say that is that Marcus, if you know Wolfie, if you're familiar with VGC lore, these guys, Wolfie and Marcus, are besties. They build together a lot. They built together for this weekend, and they almost won both regionals with this team. So we're going to come back, we're going to look at this a little bit closer, but keep your eyes on Iron Jugulus going forward. The rest of the tournament, Len got second place at another regional. Back-to-back second places is incredible. Some of the players this season are showing some insane consistency. Chuppa has made a second place, top 4, and a top 8. Len getting second place twice in a row. We'll talk a little bit more about Luca Paz as well. Some of these players' consistency is just unreal. And then speaking of consistency, Aurelien Sula finishing in the top 4 spot as well, right after a top 16 finish, I think, in OCIC. So, some really cool storylines at the top of Bochum, but the storylines of Knoxville eclipse those of Bochum, with Justin Tang coming out on top. If you don't follow Justin Tang on Twitter, follow Justin Tang on Twitter. Unironic Panda. His tweets are bangers. This guy, it's his first regional. He lied to his parents to be able to just sneak away to a regional and then won the regional. And his parents found out because his mom accidentally found the Pokemon stream while he was on stream. If that's not the greatest regional storyline of all time, I don't know what is. But it's made even better by the fact that he beat Aaron Clemens in the finals. Aaron Clemens is an established player, he's a locals grinder, but I believe this was his first regional as well. And then you look at the rest of the cut, because you're like, okay, I mean, like, two people's first regional, surely the tournament wasn't that stacked, right? Luca Paz won Liverpool, Nick Navarre, one of the best players of all time, Wolfie, probably the best player of all time, Carson, Zachary Thornburg, who's cutting like every event, or at least getting day 2 at like every event, Justin Karras. This was an insanely stacked event that just randomly had 2 first-timers in the finals. What an insane tournament. But we're going to talk a little bit about meta now, which I think is the almost cooler thing. So Bochum has some cool stuff for sure. We've got Len running his standard hard Trick Room stuff that he's been doing for a hot minute. Marcus's team we'll talk about a little bit later. We have Marco Fierro making top cut with, I believe, the same team as Zelda Sam Pandelis used in OCIC. We've got the Fluttermane Iron Moth Dozogiri team by Victor Jimenez. Like, a lot of, like, interesting stuff, but nothing too out of the ordinary when you look at this. We can scroll down a little bit. Eventually, we're going to find a Belly Bolt with David Kutesh, because it's David Kutesh. Of course he brought something like a Belly Bolt. Torviv bringing the Gardevoir is kind of cool, but as we go down, we don't really see that many super unique Pokemon. We see some that are not as common. I mean, Ceruledge is here, but it's a little bit, it's a tournament. It sure was a tournament. And then we go to Knoxville, and you look at this and you're like, oh, there's a Lillicat in here by Nails. That's kind of cool. And I guess a Murkrow made finals again. Like, you know, we all know Murkrow has its roles. And then you see the Flamigo. Okay, things are starting to get a little bit weird. Now, if you've been watching a lot of these tournaments closely, you'll know that Zachary Thornburg's team has been featuring a Psych Up Sylveon, where basically he tries to Perish Song his Tatsugiri and then Psych Up the Dozo boosts onto the Sylveon. Flamigo is a slightly worse Pokemon all around than Sylveon, but it's a lot easier to get that set up with the Co-Star ability. So it's the same general idea here with Carson's team. A similar team also got 10th with Tommy DeRosa's Flamigo team. And then you see there's Snow, Jonathan DeKukuk, running in Abomasnow and Sand, so dual weather, but like not the normal weathers a lot of the time. And it just gets weirder and weirder as you go down. Alberto Lara running his Klefki team again, like that's kind of cool. We see Ashton with another Gardevoir. But as we keep going, Jumpluff by John Hu. If you didn't watch the stream, this is notable because of the Quick Claw Fissure on the Torkoal. Okay, John, you do you. There's a Ston Jorner in here. And, like, this is just a who's who of Pokemon that people don't use. Why is there an Electrode in top 32? Well, it runs a Choice Scarf to be faster than Booster Energy Iron Bundle and then just kind of kills it. I guess. It doesn't really do that much else, but it made top 32. This tournament was just insane. There was a ton of Ceruledge on stream in day number 1. As you can see, it didn't do quite as well as people may have been expecting it to do, but just a ton of random stuff here. Vivillon does get in day 2 here at 47th. Vivillon, a Pokemon that has been talked about a little bit lately. It's a bit of a cool one. It's really, really good. We'll talk about that briefly in a little bit as well when we talk about meta. Umbreon is here. I didn't even know this one was here until I started recording this video. But yeah, overall, the meta's all over the place. So one of the main reasons I wanted to make this video is people like to make sort of meta updates after regionals and be like, okay, the meta's shifted a little bit. This looks like the direction it's going in. Post OCIC. Rain is pretty good. We'll probably see a little more rain. And like maybe a tiny bit more Mouse Ape. What a big meta shift. And then we look at this and it's like, huh? What are we gonna see in Vancouver? I don't know. Is rain gonna be good? Is Vivillon gonna be everywhere? Is Electrode a meta threat now? So I'm here to break this all down for you guys and to help you guys make sense of these very, very wacky results. So I have some usage statistics here from day 2 of both tournaments, courtesy of Necra. And I will say, first of all, I expected rain to be big. If I was going to this tournament, what I basically said was going to be big was rain and Dondozo. It was the last tournament before they patched the Dondozo bug, so I thought a bunch of people would run Dondozo to try to get one last ride in with the Order Up bug, and rain because it was just really successful for Gavin. So I thought the best thing to go for would be a rain team with a good rain mirror and a good Dozo matchup, which most rain teams have. I was very wrong. These are the stats for Bochum, and if we look at Bochum, there's not a single Pelipper here. Like, there is a good amount of Palafin. Palafin's a great Pokemon, it does not need rain to be successful. But there's not a single Pelipper here. I believe there might have been 2 or so, there's a second page of these usage stats, but for the sake of meta development, not a single Pelipper in sight. And if you go to Knoxville, only 3 of them made it into day 2, out of about 55 players. That's tiny. So rain seems to be on the outs right now. People are not really running it at all anymore. The Gavin Michaels team, one of the things that I noticed with it when I was prepping for my day 2 stuff in OCIC is that it had a lot of glaring weaknesses to things that were not in the meta. So it was a great meta call. He rolled through that tournament. But with time to develop a team around that, there are a lot of things that just do very, very well into Gavin Michaels' specific team. So not really an exact 6 that has a lot of staying power in the meta, as we can see here. But the fact that Pelipper has dropped off completely and entirely is crazy to me. And on the other side, we have Torkoal rising a little bit. Over in Knoxville, we have 3 Torkoals in day 2. One of them did make it all the way to top 4. But looking over at Bochum, 7 Torkoals in day 2. So all of a sudden, Torkoal is on the rise, and Sun seems to be the dominant weather type. Sun has been something that people have thought would be dominant this format since long before Series 2 even started, just because of photosynthesis being a thing, and Torkoal being a pretty good Pokemon, as opposed to Pincurchin for Quark Dive stuff. So Sun definitely appears to be on the rise. On the Dondozo side of things, it looks about the same as it's looked for the last few events, about 8 Dondozo in day 2 of Bochum, and I think 7 for Knoxville. And a mount. You're going to need to continue having a good Dondozo matchup. If you're not familiar with the patch, basically Order Up still boosts a stat, usually attack, when it attacks into a Protect or into a Terra Fairy or something like that. That's not supposed to be a thing, so they've patched that out. So you can now sort of stifle the growth of the Order Ups, and it makes it a lot easier to play around Dondozo with things like Intimidate cycling or Breaking Swipe. So It is a little bit weaker, but don't underestimate Dondozo going forward, because I don't think it makes that much of a difference to the general Dondozo player mindset. There's still going to be almost just as much strength behind that. You might just see a few more people running Tatsugiri Stretchy or something instead of the attack-boosting Tatsugiri form. So even with the drop-off of Pelipper usage, Palafin has maintained its relevance, and I think that's going to be something that sticks, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, you don't need Rain for your Palafin to do big damage. It has a very, very high attack stat of 160 once you get its hero form in. But another thing that I think is going to be really big for at least people trying to build around the Vancouver Regional is, if you look at the Dondozo variants that made decent showings, Co-Star Flamigo, Psych Up Sylveon, Co-Star Flamigo. So you're going to need ways to deal with not just one commander boost, but two. And the best way to do that is Haze. So, Murkrow did very, very well in this tournament. That's great for Aaron Clemens. But a more all-around way to use that is with Palafin. It's basically the only other Pokemon that's good that gets access to Haze. Otherwise, you're stuck using something like Revavroom or Vaporeon, which, you know, they sure are Pokemon. So on top of Palafin's continued usage, I also expect a big boost in Iron Jugulis. Not only are you going to have the people who just took the regional winning team, or the Wolfie team, which is, you know, two whole subsets of people that are just going to be running this exact 6 now, but on top of that, Iron Jugulis is a super interesting meta development that's come from these teams. Originally, you look at Iron Jugulis, and it's a Paradox Hydreigon that does kind of the same thing, but has a lower base stat total. So, why? Like, it's faster, okay, but does that really matter? The only really relevant thing that it outspeeds is, like, Garchomp and I guess Salamence, which is not super relevant. So, what is the deal with Iron Jugulis? So, the first thing that Iron Jugulis has that Hydreigon doesn't, of course, is access to booster energy. Quark Drive and Photosynthesis are amazing abilities when you can use them, and so the booster energy is a really, really good item. You can boost up your speed to guarantee you faster Snarls or Tailwinds, or you could just go for an even more offensive special attack boost if you really want to try to take advantage of Iron Jugulis' coverage moves. Now, I think speed is a really nice way to go, because it allows you to get Snarls off on opposing Iron Bundles and Fluttermanes that might otherwise look to counter you before they can attack. Another nice thing about Iron Jugulis is that it's only singularly weak to Fluttermanes, so you're not going to get just instantly deleted by a Dazzling Gleam or a Moonblast, which is kind of cool. Its base typing, including flying, is also a little bit neat to me, because with Hydreigon, if you run Terra Steel to resist fairy moves, you just kind of become a magnet for fighting type moves, because I know, oh, I can just hit you with close combat, regardless of whether or not you Terra, I'm hitting you super effectively. Whereas with the Fighting Dark typing of Iron Jugulis, initially you do have that neutral resistance to fighting, so that's kind of nice as well. Finally, I like Air Slash. Flying is a really, really good type right now. There's a bunch of fighting types, there's a bunch of grass Terras, and it's just a good type to have in general. Also, 30% flinch chance, never a bad out to have on a Pokemon that's boosting its speed to be faster than pretty much everything else. The final trend that I really want to talk about here is Ceruledge. We saw a lot of Ceruledge at Knoxville, and even though it didn't perform quite as well as some of these other archetypes, I think Ceruledge is a Pokemon to keep your eye on. It started gaining a little bit of popularity in the run-up to OCIC after a Ceruledge Vivillon team won a grassroots tournament over in Japan. But I think it actually starts to be even stronger with the meta shifts that we're seeing, specifically the meta shift towards Torkoal Sun. Now, a lot of the time, I end up with Ceruledge in my builder and throw it away for an Annihilate. I just think to myself, why? Annihilate is just a better bulk up user, Rage Fist is amazing, they're both ghost types, why would I not run Annihilate? But with all of these Torkoal coming to the fore, one got second, one got fourth, and we saw it in the Bochum Regional as well. Just so many Torkoals were rising up to the top. Suddenly, a Pokemon that's immune to Spore if you Terra Grass it, but remains immune to Fire, isn't all that bad a pick. Now, in a vacuum, while I do think that Annihilate is better into the former meta, it's really not by all that much. So, being able to have something that functions as a strong offensive ghost type, especially with a strong offensive fire type as well, you get healing potential with Bitterblade, the same way that Annihilate does with Drain Punch, but that immunity to Torkoal, that potential immunity to things like Heat Wave or Armor Cannon from an Armor Rouge, things like that. There's a lot of reasons why Ceruledge is specifically going to continue rising in my estimation. I expect that Ceruledge is going to have an even better performance at the next couple of regionals before, Series 3 comes around. We have to worry about Ting Lu, stuff like that. Maybe it falls off again. But I think Ceruledge is a big one to watch, and if you like looking like a main character with your big swords-wielding guy, check out Ceruledge. Before we end this video, I do kind of want to touch on some of the more gimmicky options we saw, and just kind of talk about whether I think they'll stick around. Carson and, Before we finish up this video, I wanted to talk about some of the more gimmicky options and whether or not we'll see them stick around. The Flamigo set with Dondozo was something that we saw way back already in, the very, very beginning of Series 1, and I don't really expect it to stick around all that much. Zachary's Sylveon version has been doing consistently well at every tournament. The reason that he's been doing so well is because Sylveon is a more all-around Pokemon. Flamigo did super well at this event, but I think it was more of a meta call than anything else. Flamigo struggles into a lot of things that could show up. Priority Brave Bird just kind of deletes it from existence, even with defense boosts from Commander. There's a lot of reasons why Flamigo is not quite as good all around as Sylveon. So while I expect Zachary to continue having success with this team, I don't really expect Flamigo to have another particularly deep run. Gardevoir was around, Torviv used it, Ashton used it. Gardevoir's always just kind of a good Pokemon. I do think it's kind of neat as an option to turn off Trick Room, maybe even run Imprison if you really want to, but I don't really expect it to be a gigantic force in the meta going forward. Jumpluff is a good Pokemon as well, but honestly, Jumpluff to me, it does get Redirection, which Lilligant doesn't, and it does get Tailwind, which Lilligant doesn't, but I always feel like if you're gonna run a fast Chlorophyll user with Sleep Powder, I feel like Lilligant's just better because you have access to that after you Eruption play with Torkoal. Maybe we'll see a little bit of Jumpluff, though. Again, I don't expect it to take the world by storm. Stonjourner, on the other hand, is a really interesting Pokemon that I think all of us collectively have just kind of been ignoring a little bit too much. Power Spot is an incredible ability, but it also gets some pretty neat other things that it can do. Wide Guard is an amazing move, and also pretty quick rock slides. It's really not that bad a Pokemon. So, while I don't expect Stonjourner to be 9 out of the top 16 teams or anything like that, it's probably a Pokemon that at this point we should start running our calcs for. We did see a Houndstone come in top 32. I don't love it, honestly. The idea behind Houndstone's pretty cool. You have the supportive option with Will-O-Wisp. You get Play Rough into a lot of things that are weak to Fairy right now. And then Last Respects can be this big, heavy-hitting move that when you get to the end game, it's 150, 200 base power ghost move. It really doesn't do that much. Houndstone is not that impressive a Pokemon, and unlike Rage Fist, it doesn't get a million one KOs. You need to fulfill a lot of things for Last Respects to even be a decent move, and then even if you get there, if you're playing against Friend Guard or Screens or anything like that that kind of messes with the damage output, you don't get much out of the Last Respects. So while I do think Houndstone's a cool Pokemon, I don't expect to see it all that much. My personal favorite weird thing from Day 2, the Scarf Electrode. I don't get it. I mean, I do get it. Scary Face is good. Thunderbolt to nuke the Iron Bundle. Volt Switch, I guess, probably also removes the Iron Bundle. And I guess Terra Grass for, Gastrodon? I don't really get it. I get it, but I don't really get it. I don't think we're going to see this again. But really big kudos to Andrew Johnson, because getting top 32 with an Electrode is very, very cool. The last one that I want to talk about is Drifblim on Raikou's team. Didn't make Day 2, but it did get top 64. And you might be thinking, oh, but Drifblim, Unburden, Psychic Seed, Tailwind? That might be a really good way to get the jump on something like a Booster Energy Iron Bundle. Wrong. Booster Energy Iron Bundle is actually faster than max speed Unburdened Drifblim, so while I appreciate the Blim, it does also get Haze, which makes it one of the very few Pokemon to actually get Haze. I don't think that it's going to be a particularly common Pokemon because, just not outspeeding Iron Bundle with Booster Energy is just, it's a little unfortunate for it, and I think that is kind of, for me at least, the nail in the coffin for why I wouldn't feel comfortable using Drifblim. The final thing I want to talk about very, very briefly is Mousehold. We've continued to see a shift towards more and more Mousehold usage, both with and without Annihilate. Friend Guard is an amazing ability, and Follow Me is, by my estimation, the single best move in the game. So if we look one more time at these usage stats, Mousehold on 17% of the Day 2 teams in Bochum, and on 20% of the Day 2 teams in Knoxville. So that's going to continue to go up, I think, and it's also kind of the reason that we're seeing a slight rise in Vivillon usage as well. It gets not Follow Me, but it gets Rage Powder, and also Friend Guard, and also Tailwind. There's a couple of teams where Vivillon is just it kind of does all the things they need. It compresses rolls really, really well, but Vivillon's not the topic of this video. So, at the end of the day, what are the big takeaways here? Honestly, the meta is in a massive state of flux right now, where I think anybody who is going to say that this is 100% going to be the meta at Vancouver is probably lying to you. The observations that I feel confident in are that Iron Jugulus is going to see a rise, people are going to be trying out the Wolfie Marcus team, Palafin is still going to be really, really good, with or without weather, and then Mousehold and Friend Guard will continue to be very, very useful. Oh, and Ceruledge is probably going to be pretty good along with all the sun that's going to be showing up. But even those I'm a little less confident on than the rest of the takeaways. The meta right now is all over the place, which in my opinion makes Pokemon VGC super, super fun. Contrary to what a lot of people, including myself, thought, Open Team Sheet has just allowed creativity to run rampant at these tournaments, and just seeing so many different Pokemon get their moment in the sun is just a really, really cool experience as a player and as a viewer. It's really fun to sit down and have to figure out something on the fly, where you're like, oh god, this is a Pokemon in the game, I guess. Like, let me figure out how to deal with Vivillon all of a sudden. And, like, that's super fun to me. And, like, even when you're in the lab, like, trying to figure out all of these different things that could come, like, what's the best team? It makes team building, it makes playing the game so much fun. I am honestly having such a good time with VGC 23, and I am super excited for the next events coming up. Vancouver's the next one, so hopefully Vancouver continues to be absolutely wild, and of course, we'll talk more about that after the fact. If you guys enjoyed this analysis video, let me know in the comments below, drop a like, and of course, subscribe and ring the bell to not miss any of the upcoming Pokemon VGC action on this channel. I hope you all are having a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night, whatever it is, wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you guys next time.